This is Sarah Leslie with Go All In, helping entrepreneurs live the life they want to live right now, making the money they want to make the way they want to make it, while also living a rich and full life outside of their business. True personal freedom. Let's go. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that you are too. All right. So today's topic is called Invested or in Debt, a new way to think about your financial resources. I've had a lot of conversations with people over my many years. And just more recent, it's like seems to be something that's been coming up over the last year. And I've just been doing a lot of thought around it and understanding of it as I'm helping people make decisions of whether or not to receive coaching from me to join my programs. That I've wanted to be able to help them more effectively. And also, some of the mentors that I study with have been talking a lot around this same topic. And money is, of course, just one of those topics that comes up regularly inside of life coaching and all things related because it's such a huge part of our life, such a huge part of everything that we're doing. And, part of the journey that I'm on is learning how to live more easily. And that's a huge part of what makes me different and my coaching unique is that I'm really focused in on the rest. We're still absolutely getting things done and we're living life to the fullest. And we're also doing that from this place of rest and easefulness. So in my conversations with people, there's this sentiment of having a lot of negative thoughts and a lot of negative feelings around money that they owe. And I want to dive a little deeper into this topic to be able to separate out the difference between what I refer to as being invested versus being in debt. I want to give you a new way to think about your debt and why it's going to really hurt you and slow you down in your business and in your life if you continue thinking about your debt in the same way that you perhaps are currently thinking about it. And I'm just going to refer to it as thinking about debt the old way. Okay. So, as always, if you've been here with me before, you know I'm really big on setting an intention. Whatever it is that drew you in to listen to this particular podcast on investment versus being in debt, right? Set an intention. What is it that you need right now as it relates to your own financial situation? What do you need more awareness around? What do you need to feel more light around? Where do you need to feel more availability? Okay. Set that intention. I will have this by the end of this 30 or 40 minutes. Okay. So when I get into these conversations around what is debt, right? Sometimes it's things that they just had wanted, right? The person is telling me about, oh, they have this credit card debt and it's accumulated. And I'm like, well, what is this debt about? Like, tell me about it, right? And they go on to describe, oh, I just had this period in my life where things were really hard and I just put everything on the credit card. And I was like, well, tell me about your life then. Like, did you change what you were doing or did you just keep living in the same lifestyle or what was it like? And let's just say that, this person I'm making up here, that they just continued living the exact same way that they had been living when they were making, I don't know, 150,000. And they just literally were putting everything on their credit card. And now they owe a bunch of money, right? They have a very large credit range because they were making a lot of money before. So they had a lot of credit available and now they're maxed and they owe the money back, right? So they're making these continuous payments. There's that way, right? And then there's this other group of people that I've come across. So I'm just going to narrow it down to these two groups of people because you're probably one of the two. And first person here, right, has come to a place in their life. I almost forgot this part. It's very important. They've come to a point in their life where they're like,
no longer living that way where they're just throwing everything on the credit card and they're just like, continuing to buy like all of the things. And I just think of that as like being a bit reckless and thinking of credit almost as if it were cash. And I think that's really important to distinguish, right? So if first person is like putting things on their credit card, spending money as if it were cash, right? Spending their credit as if it were cash. And now they've come to a point where they're like, I'm no longer doing that. And I'm really struggling with my own thoughts about that time period of my life, my decisions at that time, and now this debt that I've accumulated. Okay, that's person one. Person two is another person that I come across that says, I feel really like bad about my debt. And I get into the same conversation. Well, tell me about your debt. What is this? And they go on to tell me about how they are still paying off their master's degree, or they're still paying off program that they were involved in, a schooling type of program that they were in, or they're have invested in several different coaching programs or marketing programs or different business related coaching masterminds programs to increase and enhance their business or increase their own personal leadership skills to be able to be a more effective business owner. Or they've invested in things to improve their health. So maybe they wanted to see more of a concierge doctor or a more, the name is totally escaping me, but a natural doctor, right? A naturopath doctor. And they've invested significantly in seeing them and follow-up appointments and different supplements and what that was recommended. To me, right, those investments are actually completely different from the first person who's just like spending their credit like it's cash. Okay. This second person has actually made a bunch of strategic investments. Now, maybe some of them were made from a place of fear, probably, and scarcity and like, oh my gosh, I have to have this program in order to make money. I have to have this program in order to be a better entrepreneur, or, oh, I have to spend this money on my kids in order to be a good parent, or, oh, I have to support my partner and them going back to school. Otherwise, I'll feel bad about myself or what have you. And so now they have a lot of their credit leveraged in these different places. But that person, right, has made some like very intentional decisions. Again, whether it was fear related or not really doesn't matter for this point of the conversation. They were doing it from a place of wanting better for themselves, for their partner, for their kids. And it had at least a certain amount of intentional thought behind it, regardless of the motivation, right? But they were at least really thinking like, we want to be like better people, right? Could even be that they invested in a new house or a different lifestyle, right? A lot of people these days are doing like camper vans or, traveling around and staying in Airbnbs. My husband and I did that for about 3 years. It was an amazing time. Absolutely loved it. Some days I still, think about, oh, I'd love to go do that again. So a lot of people are doing that kind of like radical change in their lifestyle, right? And I'm talking about that. I'm not thinking on that as being reckless, right? Or just spending money. I'm thinking about that as making an investment also. Okay, so I would include that in person number 2, where they're like investing in their life being better, improving their circumstances, wanting the best of life and like really going after it. And what I find in these conversations is that person number 2 actually thinks about their investment, right? They're spending or they're having now money that they owe, right? So for the sake of the conversation, we'll just call it their debt. They think about their debt the same way that person number 1 thinks about their debt, right? It's got this like negative overtone, this like bad feelings about the money that they spent and now have this debt. Okay. Just when you think about the words in debt, right? I'm in debt. What feeling comes up in your body right now as I'm saying those words, right? It's probably really cringy. It's like, oh, heavy. It's got like a heaviness to it. It's got like a maybe even a black feeling around it, like a hole that's like feels really empty, like a lot of money like going out of you. I don't know. Those are just some things that I've heard people talk about. It doesn't sound good. Okay. That's the point here. So it sounds more like they did something wrong. Now they have something that's wrong and it should be fixed. It needs to be fixed and it needs to be fixed as soon as possible. Okay. In other words, the sentiment around that part of their life and that energy about that part of their life is not as it should be, right? There's a part of my life that is not as it should be, and therefore I feel bad about it. And right next to that is, and I can't invest in anything else except the quote unquote basics, right? Which of course has got a humor to it in and of itself, an ironic humor, because your basics are going to be different from person A and person B, right? And different from my basics. So what happens when we go into this place is we're going into fear, right? We're now living from fear. We're living from scarcity. We're going into survival mode. There are a lot of different ways to describe this. At the heart of it, we're going into this place that is very restricted. Okay. And when you get really lasered in and focused, I have to pay off this debt. It's coming from fear. It's coming from, I feel bad that I owe all of this money. I feel bad that I've like gone and done what I've done. And most of the time people feel this way, especially if the thing that they invested in didn't actually quote unquote produce the results that they expected to have happen. Okay. So of course, if you invest a bunch of money and then your business fails or you don't get the healing or, whatever, you don't find love, then you could, right? This is one person's experience, feel really bad. And your reflection could be like, that was not a good decision. That was not a good investment. That was like a bad investment. Well, I don't think about it that way. Okay. And let me finish this part and then we're going to jump over there because I want to get to the good stuff, but I want you to really understand what happens when you go into fear, when you go into the restriction. Okay. We put these like blinders on ourselves, and blinders is just another way of saying limits, right? Which is also another way of saying restriction. And you feel bad, right? You feel less than, you feel restricted, right? You think about what it feels like if you like could never leave this room, right? Like my office is, I don't know, it's like a standard bedroom size, 8 by 12 probably, or 10 by 12. I'm not sure what standard is, but must be around that size. If I could never leave this room, I'm literally starting to feel extremely uncomfortable just at the thought of not being able to leave this room. So that's what it feels like when you declare, I have this thing that's bad, and now I have to really buckle down and I can't spend any other money except for the basics. You can even see the scowl on my face as I'm even describing it, right? That feels awful. And so when we're now carrying around that energy inside of us, those thoughts, those feelings, which I just refer to as that energy, I'm bad. I have this thing that's bad. I'm bad and I have to get rid of it. Now we're just starting what I call a shame loop. Now you feel bad. You're restricting what your availability is to life. And you're going to now feel bad because you can't actually just do the things that you feel inspired to do. And you can't even really dream about them because why? You've got this huge thing that you're carrying around that feels so heavy and uncomfortable and awful. I hope that's like really clear what happens, one, when you think about when we just have this thing that we refer to as debt, right? And then all of the things that come out of that for, again, most people. That being said, what is the shift here? right? I want to get to the good stuff, and I'm sure you do too. For me, the way that I like to think about this and the way that I work with my clients is shifting from seeing yourself as someone who is in debt to someone who is invested. Okay. Again, whether you're person one or person two that I described earlier, at this point in the journey, the shift here that's available that I'm offering to you is to think about yourself as invested. It's a different way of thinking about your resources, your financial picture, the way in which you're currently referring to yourself and the monies that are owed. Because when we think about the word invested, what does it sound like to you? It sounds sexy to me, right? I'm invested. Fuck yeah. That sounds awesome, right? Now, if you're a person that grew up in a world where you did very little with investments, which I had very little exposure to investments until probably late teenage years, early college years, that was like not not a word I would have been exposed to or really understood when it came to money, at least for sure. And when I came into that world and I started working with a financial planner and my CPA at the time, who was like amazing rock star at helping me with all of this stuff, money related investments and 401ks and all of the things, right? That being said, investment, right? It sounds so like rich and fun and like something that you want. So the reason that I think you can just easily shift over here to seeing yourself as invested instead of being in debt is because even if you're person one who like had this more reckless spending, you're not that person anymore. And so if you keep looking at that debt the way you're looking at it right now, where you're creating the shame loop and you're going into restrictive mode of your spending now, you're going to literally reproduce more restriction for yourself because your mind is so fixated and focused in on being in restrictive mode and all that that means for you, the ways that that looks for you. And so instead of actually getting yourself into a much better place, very quickly at least, you're going to paint this picture of it being like a long journey to getting that debt paid off. And in the process, you're most likely not going to feel amazing about yourself, about paying it off, and about what's still possible for you. We want to always be in the largest realm of possibility for ourselves in order to have access to the most resources as a human, right? Our beautiful creativity and all that is around creativity comes when we feel the most open and when we are in that limitless place of seeing possibilities all around us. So if you continue to think about this thing as debt and seeing it as a negative thing, and it's more of like a, than it is of like a, yeah, it's this thing I have over here. It's cool. I'm taking care of it. It's no problem. You'll think about it. It'll slow you down. You'll have lots of unconscious thoughts, right? 90% of our thoughts are unconscious, 9%. So it will absolutely be taking up energy. So that means you'll feel more tired than you need to. You'll have like maybe a harder time with motivation. Like there's so many ways that this comes up. You might feel just this more like heaviness inside of you. It might show up like just waking up in the morning where you don't have like that bounce of getting out of bed, but you're like more slow to get out of bed. Again, it's going to show up differently for everyone. I just know that if you continue to hold on to it that way, it will slow you down. It will also slow you down from actually being able to purchase the things that you actually really need to purchase in order to actually continue growing and expanding and be able to pay the debt off faster. When you look back and you're like able to really appreciate and value the investments that you made, one, you're going to think about the results even differently. You're definitely going to think about your decisions to invest way more powerfully. Even if you didn't get the results you hoped for or things didn't turn out the way you'd hoped that they would, the reality is you're just a different caliber of a human for having done it. You're a person who's willing to invest in themselves, to go all in. That is incredible. So it's a shift for multiple reasons to now, one, let go of the bad feelings, let go of the shame, let go of the judgment about your debt. That way, you actually can begin to develop a framework, right? A paradigm where you can have this money that is now owed to someone else, and you can still continue to live your life full out. Doesn't mean you can't keep buying things. It doesn't mean you can't keep investing in things. Also recognize sometimes things work, quote unquote, and sometimes they just don't pan out the way we expected. Okay. I want you to see it's not good or bad. When you see yourself as a person who's invested, you're going to just literally make better decisions, more empowered decisions in all the areas of your life, and certainly when it comes to money and when it comes to business. What I'm going to also add here is most people play it safe. Most people are living in fear, in some version of survival mode. Again, regardless of your income status, you can be operating from survival. You can be operating from survival mode at any dollar point. Most people are playing life from this vantage point of, I don't want to be wrong. And so they just literally will never invest at the level that you are willing to invest in themselves. They just won't do it, right? They'll come up on something and they'll be like, wow, this sounds amazing. I could see how this would really help me. And I'm not willing to do it because they're scared. And ultimately slowing them down from having the best that life has to offer them. From trusting themselves to feel the inspiration of life within them and be inspired towards something good, and then they shut it down, right? That's actually mistrust of self that happens inside of us. It's a defense mechanism that basically keeps us from growing and instead keeps us stuck right where we are in the status quo. Okay? So you're one of those people that wants to live outside of the status quo. You're one of those people that wants to grow and have the very best things and be who you know you're designed to be and intended to be, and you crave the more of life. Okay? So that means you've got to remain open. And here's what I'll give you as the general thread. And of course, if I were working with you specifically, we would dial in on what you were spending money on and where to invest and where to hold off investing until a later time. You want to really look very discerningly at the things that will actually help you to improve yourself the fastest and in a way that will literally give you more access to the resources within you to be able to pay the money that you owe back the most easily. Okay? So some examples of that are coaching support where the person is specifically helping you see where your current limits are, where you're currently focused on things that actually aren't getting you where you want to go the fastest, where you're probably not getting that great of a return on investment, places where you're investing yourself and you're putting in energy and time where it's really not going to move your business forward or going to move your life forward to reach the goals that you have for yourself. Now, it requires having a third party to help you do that work because, again, 90% of our thoughts, our beliefs are unconscious. So, I won't even catch some of the things that I spend time thinking about or some of the things that I think I need to do, I should do, I have to do, right? I'll just give you this great example of this podcast. I wanted to do this podcast when I very first started my own business. I forget, let's just say 5 years ago. I really wanted to do this podcast because I love podcasts. I listened to a handful of the mentors that I was, following and researching at the time. And I was like, I absolutely want to have a podcast. And the mentors, fortunately, that I was around, that I was in their world, they said to me multiple times, and I heard, in various things that I was taking in, don't start a podcast at the beginning of entrepreneurship. Don't start a podcast at the beginning of your coaching business. Wait until you have that consistent cash flow going and then start a podcast. Okay. So grateful to have been ingratiated in that wisdom. And it really helped me to learn what to actually really dial in on, what were like actually the discerned things that were really most important for me to actually invest in so that I could get the best return on my investment and have the support that I needed in my life to continue to learn the skill sets that I needed to be more successful. I'm really dialing it in. You might know it as mindset, and more so, a person who's really going to help you get more clear and upgrade your ability to lead yourself, to more effectively make decisions, to set more better boundaries for yourself about how you're spending your time, about what you're spending your time on, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to limit it to the title of life coach. You could work with somebody who's like a somatic healer. There's so many different names, an energy healer who is doing something very similar, something in the realm that I'm referring to. Okay. Could also be something related to your health. If you're just like, you have a really serious health thing and you come up and you meet someone that's like a different kind of a medicine or a doctor, and you're like, oh my gosh, I could really see how this thing could just totally change my life. That's the formula that I would use. Like, it should really feel like this would totally change my life for the better. Like that one domino that you knock over and then it like helps so many things get so much better. That being said, if you want more specifics about you and where you're at with your debt, with what to invest in, what not to invest in, and you're interested in doing the coaching work with me, let's jump on a call. So I have a juicy new mastermind that I'm launching the first week of August. If you're interested in applying, I will have that information here in the show notes. It's going to be a very intimate group, limited to 5 people, where you're going to be dialing in your sales process and creating clients, with the goal being for you to create consistent income. If you're interested, all the information will be in the show notes. That's it for me, you guys. Thanks so much for being here with me. Don't forget to link and subscribe to my channel. All the links will be in the show notes. Between now and when I see you next, go be extraordinary.
Ready to hire your own personal one-to-one mentor to help you take your life and your business to the next level? Go to my website where you can sign up for a no charge, no pressure consultation where we can get to know each other better. I get to hear your vision. I'll help you understand exactly what's getting in your way. And if it feels like a good fit and I believe I can help you, we'll talk about what it looks like to work together.